Cancer. I'm sorry. Bad joke. It's not actually cancer. So recently my videos have been getting a lot of attention lately, and it's the first time I've ever gotten so many questions about the birthmark on my face. Just questions and comments about it, so I started responding very dry, and I said cancer. Now this made everyone believe that I had cancer, which I see now reflecting on it how this misconception has happened, but it's gotten so much attention that I feel like it's starting to grow out of my control. So I want to make this video to be as clear as possible so that we have something to point to in the future the next time somebody asks. So let me answer the question properly this time. Why do I have a patch of beard on my face? It's known as Congenital Melanocytic Nevus. Jesus, that one is really hard. Also known as CMN, not to be confused with the Christian Men's Network. And what it is very simple. It's essentially sort of similar to like a benign tumor, except it develops in the embryo or usually in about the first year when you get a cluster of melanocytes. Now, if you don't know, melanocytes are these same cells that make melanin, or the pigment in your skin, and they usually migrate to all the right areas, like moving to your head or wherever they need to be when you're a fetus. But they can cluster and form these like benign moles here. That's all this is. Now, you might have heard melanocytes before. They are the cells responsible for causing melanoma. Essentially, the mark here and melanoma sort of develop very similarly. The only difference is that these are benign and stop, and they aren't really cancerous, but the reason they are there is similar to cancer. So when somebody asks, what is this mark on your face, and you want to be as reductive as possible, you say cancer. But the reality is that's sort of like somebody asking, how does a car run? And you say, the engine explodes. It doesn't really answer the crux of the question. These actually come in various sizes. Now, I'm not going to show you the images because they are a little graphic, but they can cover large portions of your body. I'm very lucky in that mine is fairly small, which brings me on to the risks, because CNM is actually something that can later develop into melanoma. Again, this risk is very dependent on the actual size of the mark. So mine is pretty small to medium, which means it's generally very low risk, right? Again, I'm not sick with anything other than the common cold right now. I don't have cancer. I'm not fighting anything. This is just something I monitor. I have to measure it to make sure that the size isn't changing, keep an eye on it, make sure that the pigment or that the color isn't changing, and every so often, if I'm concerned, I'll see a dermatologist and get it looked at. But, if I really wanted to, I could get surgery or laser to get it removed. But then I would just have this big scar on my face. I would have this patch here that just wouldn't grow any beard. And low key, that sounds worse. And it's not like it's an issue. Like, it doesn't bother me at all. I can't shave it too close or risk nicking it, because then that could grow into something like melanoma later. Now, honestly, getting it removed is not something I ever really considered growing up. It was brought up as an option multiple times, but my grandfather who raised me was always very adamant about making sure that it was something that I was proud of. It's a mark of uniqueness, not something to hide, and not something that I really can hide, right? So when I got a ton of comments asking about it, at first it bothered me a little bit, but I very quickly realized that it's exactly the same as when I was in kindergarten and all the kids would run up to me asking to touch it. It's very basic human curiosity. So I understand. And now my grandfather making sure that I was very proud of it. This birthmark is why the channel is named 7. My nickname growing up was given to me by my grandfather because he believed, as far as he knew, I was the 7th male in the family to have a birthmark like this. Now, we had a very big family, very big Mexican family that immigrated from Michoacan. But when he was raising me, even to the point of all my yearbook photos growing up, he would leave notes for the photographers to make sure, hey, show that chin angle to show the birthmark. I didn't even have a whole lot of photos of the mark growing up, but it's like, it's always been there, right? Here I am at 4 with my baby sister when she was a child. But yeah, anyways, the internet can be a rough place right now, so anything that looks different is just going to get called out, and I acknowledge that. Some are curious, some have been less kind, and it's not something I've ever really been insecure about. Like I said, my grandpa made sure I was proud of it, and I'm very grateful looking back, because I could have had that first caretaker forever, and I could have been ashamed of it, and I could have been hiding it in photos. Anyways, I guess I'm making this video really to say, be proud of what makes you unique. My grandfather built that into me before I was old enough to understand why it really mattered. Now I'd like to pose a question to you. What do you have that makes you unique and different that you're proud of? Leave it in the comments down below and we can all have a fun conversation about it.